always had a passion to help others, so this is the perfect place for me.
You're not afraid to reach out.
Flora Kiwang, Cameroon. Maklit Shonga, Ethiopia.
Javed Khan, Bangladesh.
Dennis Carrick, Bosnia and Herzegovina.
They give you what you need for the future.
You're watching WHPS, Highland Park, Detroit. The views and opinions expressed on the following show are not necessarily the views and opinions of WHPS, its affiliates, management, or sponsors.
Great, amazing morning to you. Rise and shine up and at it. We getting it together. I see you got my hair gone. We rolling. I know that you could be anywhere. Thank you so much for being a part of the conversation. Amazing morning to you. Rise and shine up and at 'em. It's a phenomenal new day. You know, that's how we do it. We're going to give you everything that you need right here on WHPR TV 33 or Comcast 90 or Roku or Fire Stick or Facebook Live or Smoke Signal, because that's how we are. I mean, we're a multi-tiered platform, engaging station here. So we want to make sure that however we reach you, you get the information that matters. And you'll definitely get that this morning on Cannabis, discussing the business of cannabis. I am your hostess, Colette Ramsey. I do my curtsy, that's what I do, because I know you're anywhere doing anything. I know you're not watching anything, because anything that you're watching specifically won't give you the information that we have here. And let me just reiterate, we had a phenomenal conversation on last week. We had the Honorable Detroit City Councilman James Tate was on the line with us, and we had community activist and researcher Angela Lugo Thomas in the building. We were recapping some of the returns from the election last week. And I shared with us, you all recall, that on that Tuesday, that celebrated some 54 years since President Lyndon Johnson signed the Voting Rights Act. And I thought it was so appropriate that a day after that, we had the opportunity, we were able to discuss legislation that was on the ballot about cannabis, specifically in 3 communities across Michigan. And right here in the city of Highland Park, there was an ordinance, and we have had ongoing conversations about this ordinance, and we can reiterate this concept of the ordinance. And I want to let everyone know that that is the ability and I believe the beauty of who we are in America and this perceived democracy. And yes, I said perceived because it ebbs and flows, and you can learn the democracy and you learn how to make it work for you and what happens under the laws, because we did have that such on last week. We had a group that wanted to implement a ordinance for the city, and of course it's always about the vote, and I want the citizens to know that in every aspect, no matter what the subject matter is, you really make a difference. And so for that particular ordinance, it identified only 2 dispensaries in this great city, and the citizens had a right to vote for it. And the citizens said no. And so that doesn't mean that, as Angela Lugo Thomas stated, that we won't have cannabis in this city. It doesn't mean that at all. It just means that it should be presented by the citizens, for the citizens, to reap the benefits right here in this city. And I like to see all the other boxes checked. I'd love to see some micro business components. I'd love to see some grow components. I'd love to see some processing components. I'd love to see some transportation. I mean, I believe that if we're all inclusive, we should definitely have an ordinance and legislation that includes all the components of this thriving industry. And so we also had the pleasure of discussing what it looked like in Detroit under the leadership, because Councilman Tate sponsored the bill for the city of Detroit that talked about what cannabis looks like in that space. It is an ever-growing and being a flowing space. And so I briefly introduced to us last week, and you know what? That was just me, because I know a lot of times, and I have to preface this. Let me just do that. I ask us to think about how we conduct business, think about what laws look like, think about what is presented to us that we believe creates a mindset on how we do what we do. So let's stay there, right? I just want you to take that statement right as it is. And then if you look at what you've been told, what you've been presented with historically, that you're supposed to follow, these models that you're supposed to follow, that then create a favorable result for you, and you followed the models and it doesn't create a favorable result, at any point do you question if that model was the model for you? I need to say that again because I'm going somewhere with this. Specifically, if we continue, specifically people of color, let me just say that, in these Americas, to take these models that were not created by us, that were not designed by us, that were not looked at to address the situations that we are in these Americas, and then all we do is take that model and put it on top of where we are, and we expect it to work. And throughout the communities across this great nation of ours, it shows that it does not work. And whether it is addressing cannabis legislation, and whether it is addressing crime in our cities, whether it is addressing education in our cities, us adopting what was given to us does not work. And so yet again, we are here in Michigan having this conversation about social equity. And let me just tell you, there are models upon models. I tell everyone from my research right now, I believe that Illinois got it right. As of right now, Illinois got it right, because not only are they were able to identify funding options, grant programs, social use components, expungement that work to create a fair and just playing field. Michigan, not so much. And I introduced the legislation. They've identified the 19 communities, and I believe that those are the same 19 communities in which the emergency manager were put in. If I listed the names, you would say yes, those are the same ones that emergency managers were introduced in, because the city, the perception was that they weren't able to govern themselves. You weren't able to pay your bills. You weren't able to create legislation that was best for the residents of your cities. And so therefore now we have identified you yet again as being disadvantaged. And out of those 19 cities, we'll give you an opportunity to have someone that we identify from our office come in and teach you about how to make the resources work for you. That is what the social equity option is for Michigan. And we'll not only have someone teach you how to make use of the resources and the references, we'll just give you a discount. And if you apply, if you are specific to all these boxes that we check, then it can be in upwards of 60% off of the fees. Well, I shared with you before that if indeed I have $500,000 just sitting here waiting to invest, 25% off, I don't think it's going to sway me one way or another. If I don't have the $500,000 to invest, 25% off is not going to sway me one way or another. So how does that best equip us to enter into this billion-dollar industry? And so I have yet to get the answer from them. And so what I had to do in understanding that is create a group. It's called CASE. And great amazing morning to the core group of CASE Board of Directors this morning. And that stands for what? Cannabis Association for Social Equity. Because our charge is to not only address the ills of not having legislation to allow people options and access into this industry, but then to identify the opportunities in which we can come in and help those who could apply in those spaces to reap the benefits of them. So, for example, for Michigan, there's a model that we have on the table right now based on all that they're giving, which is not so much how we make that work here. I share with you that Massachusetts specifically has permits, 123 of them, and only 5 have been accessed. This morning, a little bit down the line, I'm going to share with you a video. Boston, the first recreational license that was given to a group, and it happens, they have an interesting dynamic in their space, is that you have to have a host agreement. So there's a gentleman by the name of Kobe Evans who is a part owner in that space, a man of color. And so you will see an interview that he has with the news, and he talks about having a host agreement with the various municipalities and what his challenges are if he does not know government. So he stated several of the cities in which they're interested in doing business in, but because he does not have an access point with the governance of that city, then he has a little challenge. And so that's a barrier to entry. And so I'm just asking all of us, because at the end of the day, you can't get more for you than what you know to get. You know, it's that whole adage they say, well, you can't get more than what you know how to ask for or what you can have someone to do for you. Well, the truth is, you can't get more if you don't know what to ask for. And then, if you don't know what to ask for, you clearly can't create a plan to be able to create it for yourself. And so that's what this whole conversation about is, what we go through this every Wednesday and every day in between, is to give you the information so you can make the best decisions to understand how we got here, what this looks like, and as this billion-dollar industry is thriving everywhere else, how does it benefit you as a person of color? And I'm imploring agencies, I'm imploring the Urban League, I'm imploring the NAACP, I'm imploring these groups, these social groups. I was going to say another word, but we're imploring these groups to get in a space where you realize, take away what your personal beliefs are. That dogma that says, oh, you believe that marijuana is bad. Well, if indeed you believe that marijuana is bad, I don't know why we have all the drug houses in urban and inner cities. If you believe that marijuana was bad, because you would have taken your efforts to go and close those things down and to implore those men and women, because they are entrepreneurs in their own right. They are running businesses, whether small or multi-tiered, because they have employees, they have payroll, they have products and services, they have marketing, they have branding, they have logistics. They are entrepreneurs in their own right. You just have to transfer them into a space. And so that's what I'm talking about, that we need to address on today. That we still have a black market, a very thriving black market. And the truth of the matter is, if you don't have to live in the black market anymore, what are we doing to remove ourselves out of the harm and dangers of that space and to come into the light? It is that simple. It's no different than prohibition. You know, the family's legacies, the Rockefellers and the Kennedys, of bootlegging and moonshine and the like throughout the hills of the Ozark Mountains and Appalachia and the like. And then when they got a chance to transfer it over, they immediately did. So now I want to wear suits and I want to look good and I want to fit into a culture, no matter how I got my start, but I'm going to figure out how to make it work for us. And that's no different than what we're seeing across this globe right now, is that everyone who originally their foremothers and fathers would have poo-pooed on them in the cannabis industry are now leaving their corporate America jobs, using that same corporate structure to galvanize and secure funding to then create these corporate giants in the space of cannabis. Let me open you up with our quote for this morning, because I really wanted to resonate with you. Democracy is when the indigent and not the men of property are the rulers. Let me give it to you one again. Democracy is when the indigent and not the men of property are the rulers. That was from Aristotle. And so I'm imploring us and I'm asking us today that if we are indeed in this space of understanding what a democracy is, that means that those who are less than, those who don't have the opportunities, those who know that they weren't born with the silver or the gold spoon in their mouths, the defined indigent, are in power. That's a true democracy. Is that they understand what they need and then the process is in place to give it to them. Not a process that is in place defined by the individuals who never have experienced your plight and your history, excuse me, and your perspective, and yet they're creating laws and they're having rhetoric and conversation and propaganda with you to convince you that they can benefit you. Excuse me, how's that working for you? How's it been working? It's not. And so now all across the globe in this cannabis space, we've seen every entity that's picking it up, from the edibles to now the oils to everything in between and the infused food, and we're not reaping the benefits of it. So I want you to think about that this morning. And maybe for those specifically in Michigan, maybe it was a conversation of trying to understand how we got here. And then, I think more importantly, what's next? Because if you think that this industry is not booming by leaps and bounds in Michigan, you are sadly mistaken. There are big business in Michigan that you would never think are here reaping the benefits and rewards. There's conferences upon conferences upon conferences that are happening here in Michigan. You don't have to go to California like I did. You don't have to go to Vegas, upcoming Vegas. You don't have to go to all those places to get information. There are spaces right now, Cobo Hall, the Book Cadillac, they're going to be hosting events. I believe there's one that this weekend coming up about the cannabis industry, and I bet you, as I've always experienced, that everyone's in line, everyone that's in that room, everyone that's on that panel, everyone that's getting that information does not look like the majoritative base of the people who have kept this city thriving. And is it just that you don't believe? And if you don't have an interest in it, no problem. But if indeed you do have an interest in it, I need you to understand why you're not fully engaged. And is that based on them, or is that just based on you? But maybe the bigger conversation is to give you a comparative, or to give you a narrative, to give it a historical perspective. Maybe that's what it is. So that's what we're going to do this morning. Whenever my team, it's amazing when you have leadership in the building. I'm very privileged this morning to have one of the leaders, the owner in the building, to help me produce this show. So Mr. Tyler is amazing, and I'm just so pleased. And I know that I didn't have to say that, and he's going to say, Colette, you didn't have to say that. But I did have to say that, because that doesn't it pick into what we were just talking about? That you have to be in a space that if it is yours, whatever you have to do to make it work, you come to make it work. And that you make sure you understand all aspects of it. So whether it's behind the boards, whether it's the front desk, whether it's behind the mic, that leadership here knows how to do just that, and they're great at it. And that's why the doors continuously remain open, and that's why we're able to have the real conversations that we have. And the impact that we have. I have a gentleman that's going to be calling me, Mr. Swan. Great, amazing morning to you. He's down south, and he watched the show, and he hit me up and said, hey, I need your help down here. And help me get the information so that I can create these conversations down here and create the opportunities for us down here. But if it wasn't for what is happening right here at TV 333 and in partnership with Cannabis.tv, we wouldn't be able to make that connection. Because if you don't understand anything, absolute correct knowledge and shared knowledge is power. It makes no difference for me to just know and then you not know. And then me not to be able to give you access to me, to be able to share that and create programs and to give you information to make this democracy and legislation for this thriving industry work for you. So whenever Mr. Tyler tells me that we're ready, if we are, absolutely we are, we're going to go to a clip. And it's only a few minutes, everyone, but it's going to give a perspective of how we got here, cashing in on the legalized cannabis business. Let's take a look.
Michigan lit the way in the Midwest for recreational marijuana. So, where are all the pot shops? On Election Day 2018, Michigan voters clearly said, legalize it. Not exactly known for being a progressive state, Michigan became the first in the Midwest to legalize recreational marijuana. But we're not Colorado just yet. There are plenty of signs of spring in Michigan. Robins, daffodils,
and thousands of people lighting up joints at Hash Bash. It's held each year in Ann Arbor on the first Saturday of April at high noon.
Hello, Hash Bash! We did it!
It started as a protest in the 1970s, but over the years it's become increasingly mainstream and is now a can't-miss meet and greet for Michigan Democrats.
Got to decriminalize marijuana and get people out of jail that are in jail.
Drugs are not a criminal law issue. Drugs are a public health issue.
Hash Bash has evolved from a protest into a celebration, but I like to remind people of the roots of the protest and why this came about. This came about because people were protesting the laws against marijuana.
While Michigan legalized medical marijuana in 2008, there was confusion around enforcement. For years, police cracked down on medical growers, raiding dispensaries and riding ATVs into the woods to chop down pot plants.
Well, the government has always been pretty far behind the people on this subject, and it's taken a lot of kicking and screaming to drag the government along. They acted like they were doing everything they could to expedite this, but clearly that was not the case.
It took the state 8 years to sort out rules to bring medical pot under stricter control.
Medical marijuana was an avenue that average people could get behind and understand, especially once they saw people benefiting from it.
Once the state figured out how to handle medical marijuana, the biggest weed businesses in the country saw an opportunity to begin staking their claim in Michigan.
You're going to have big, sophisticated players coming into the market. MSO or multi-state operators are largely publicly traded, and they're absolutely coming to Michigan.
Larger companies, specifically companies that are transitioning from tobacco or alcohol, they're learning that they're losing market share to cannabis, and so they'd like to transition into marijuana.
Suddenly, it was no longer just the hippies and activists from Hash Bash asking lawmakers for change. By 2018, recreational marijuana had momentum in Michigan. With the help of national political groups and a successful signature drive, legislation landed on the November ballot. 57% of Michigan voters said yes.
It feels relieving that you can't just get in trouble for smoking marijuana anymore.
I think it's going to bring a lot of money into the state. I think it's going to help with a lot of things. Our roads are awful, so hopefully it can help with that.
More tax revenue, a decrease in medical costs, an increase in the happiness index. Yes.
I think you'll see a whole host of marijuana-infused businesses. You'll see wellness products, topical, balms, lotions, makeup.
We'll see retail stores. We'll see growing of 100, 500, and 2,000 plant sizes. We'll see processing companies, and that's where the branding occurs.
There's virtually no end to where cannabis will be used from a consumer standpoint.
So recreational marijuana is legal. There's just one problem. There's still nowhere to legally buy it.
We asked, where do you get your pot from?
Well, I'm actually a licensed patient at home, so I can go to a dispensary still. But I'm sure there's people that somebody knows somebody that grows.
I got a guy.
When the law went into effect, the state didn't have rules ready for growing and selling recreational marijuana. But the law does allow for small gifts of weed. So some ganjapreneurs have taken advantage of that, selling things like books, chocolate, or t-shirts with a free gift. Gray market businesses are the least of the industry's problems. Immediately after the legalization vote, local governments panicked. More than 400 communities have already banned pot shops and grow houses.
I don't think it's good for Pontiac. I think it's a mistake. It's just, to me, opening up Pandora's box to other issues. There's cost to enforcement.
We don't need it.
This is somewhat reminiscent of Prohibition ending too, right? As alcohol became more acceptable, lawmakers, regulators realized that this isn't the end of the world. If it's done in a safe way, if it's done in a compliant way, we expect that more and more municipalities will opt in. But every elected official in every community ultimately needs to represent the will of their voters and their community.
But even in cities that are welcoming big cannabis, pot shops won't be opening up anytime soon. Michigan likely won't see its first legal sale of recreational marijuana until 2020.
The applications have to be available by December 6th of this year, and the state has 60 days to process those applications and make a decision. So at the latest, by March, we should have stores open and operating.
The state of Oregon underwent a similar struggle after legalizing weed 4 years ago. The market there wasn't up and running until a year and a half after voters said yes. And even when companies did open, it wasn't exactly a walk in the park.
The problem that Oregon has is oversupply. They never capped licenses until just recently. There are people who are illegally shipping it out of state. And in addition, some of the growers are having a hard time making it because there's a glut on the market.
I think Michigan is trying very hard to learn from other states. When there's too much product in the market, A, tax revenue will fall. B, if prices fall below the level of normal market conditions, operators are going to be hard-pressed to follow the regulatory scheme, and if they cut corners, it's not safe for patients, it's not safe for consumers, and it ultimately puts a lot of pressure on the regulatory framework.
Recreational marijuana businesses will face state and federal regulations and roadblocks, like finding a bank that will even do business with them.
I would love to not have to come to work every day violating federal laws, but I realize that social change in this country takes time. At some point in the game, federal legalization is likely going to happen and should happen. It's happened in other countries like Canada. It's happening throughout the world. Launching in a new industry that's highly regulated, that there is some political or regulatory strife around, is not easy. But is it a worthwhile endeavor? We believe so.
But while we wait to see what legalization actually looks like in Michigan, there's still clearly plenty of pot to go around. It took a decade for Michigan voters to make the leap from legalizing medical marijuana to legalizing recreational marijuana, and the debate isn't over. Visit mlive.com/howwegothere for more information about legal weed in Michigan and to learn how the industry is expected to change in our state and beyond.
So appreciative to MLive for that amazing feature on how we got here and what does legalization look like in Michigan, and specifically from a monetary standpoint. Don't you think it's so interesting how we know that this is federally not approved, but business is thriving, businesses are booming, corporations are running, people are consuming. And specifically, MLive did an analysis. There are 4.7 million residents in Michigan that live in communities that are want to ban the use of actually having cannabis businesses in their municipalities. However, it does not prohibit their residents to possess and consume. They just don't want the shop in their locale. And so much so that municipalities had until October of this year to determine what that's going to look like before the state actively moves in, as the clip purported, to be able to create the licensing opportunities to have them move full force ahead. So what does that mean? That just means that, okay, we're going to give you a chance, but if you don't do it, we're still going to do it. We're moving full steam ahead. It is the business of cannabis. And while you're sitting around here twiddling your thumbs, trying to figure out, oh, some folks are still, I had conversations still with some people over the last couple of days trying to tell me that it's bad. We can't stay there. Like, that is not the space that you can stay there, because it has been approved medicinally. It has been approved recreationally. It will be full effect on 2020 recreationally. Stop it. I'm just asking. But again, if I didn't give you a historical perspective, you wouldn't know how to be able to move into another space that we're going to, and that's the presidential elections. Now, let me just say, out of all the candidates now, and everyone is jumping on the cannabis bandwagon, but I have to admit, Senator Sanders was the first one back in 2016 that stated that he wanted to decriminalize marijuana. And I appreciated that. And there were several conversations, and I know you all recall them throughout all the news cycles, in which he talked about the unfair and unjust treatment to people of color who have been wrongly imprisoned because of marijuana, the selling of marijuana, the use of marijuana. And so he has been a long-standing advocate to decriminalize marijuana. And so much so now, over the last couple of days, there's been news reports that have stated that he says, guess what, by executive order, when you select and elect me as president, then I will decriminalize marijuana, cannabis. Now, from a political standpoint, I don't know if you're thinking about it, because remember, this is chess, not checkers. You now have all these Democratic candidates who are talking about cannabis, and their plans for cannabis and what this looks like. But the truth of the matter is, I believe that Trump, before he gets out of, well, yes, I'm saying it, before he gets out of office, is going to decriminalize it. He's going to take the wind out of the sail, Because if I don't give you something to be able to latch on to be able to hold me accountable for, or to be able to say that I'm not doing something in the best interest of the people, if I take that away from you, what do you have? And so I just believe that's just me from the political strategist mindset of saying, you know what, he's not going to let you take that to the ballot box. He's going to wait until the end, especially if he believes that his chances of being reelected are slim. He's going to do something to pull that trigger and say, aha, I'm here. And just like he does with all his other conversations, to try to capture a target group. To say that, guess what? So now, and because we know that the money is there, so let me just say that. There was a really interesting article last week that The Hill presented and said, it's amazing how now there is a time you cannot walk through the hallowed halls of the Capitol and not hear conversations about cannabis. And that's the first time in literally the history of these United States that it is so welcomed, because lobbying dollars are there, because people are putting in their monies to be able to get the votes that they need for this business of cannabis. And so it's become just as normal now as us talking about water, or as us talking about education, or as us talking about opioids. Cannabis is here. So those are some things that you're going to have to think about as you prepare for the presidential election of what is important to you, specifically as it pertains to cannabis. And a lot of you all, again, realize that the crux of the conversation should be specific to what you want it to do for you. I believe that decriminalizing marijuana, cannabis, opens a door for the bigger conversation to press legislators to what? Expunge records. That's my push. If for nothing else, to right the wrongs of folks who have been incarcerated and or have things on their records that are prohibiting them from getting loans, from going to school, from getting viable jobs, being able to take care of themselves. Isn't that in and of itself enough for us to use the law for? You have to learn how to make the law work for you. That's the whole point about democracy. But if you don't understand the law, you don't understand how to make it work for you, and you sure can't make the individuals who say that they represent you work for you. And so wherever you are right now, I would implore you, you need to ask your influencers, ask your pastors, ask your imams, ask them, where are we with cannabis as it relates to taking the pressures off of people who have records that need to be expunged? You know, we have expungement week coming up in September. And so that's one thing the case is very much a proponent of, and we're pushing that to be able to partner with entities across this state and across this country to talk about expunging records. It's crucial. Let me go to the line. Thanks for your patience. Great morning to you.
Yeah, I just chimed in on your show. I just wanted to make my comments quickly.
Yes.
If a race has no history, if it has no worthwhile tradition, it becomes a negligible factor in the thought of the world, and it stands in danger of being exterminated. Now, if you're not fighting for freedom, then you will continue to suffer and tyranny. We are so caught up in the white man's lies and ignorance. We've been so whitewashed that we don't even understand how to get out of the enemy's train of thought. We're so deep into the belly of the beast that we can't be free to do what's natural and in order and in divine for us to do and be. Thank you for taking my call. I just had to throw something out.
Thank you so much. And let me tell you, and she's absolutely right. And I'm going to digress a minute because I can. That's what we do, because we have to make it fit this circle, right? So you all know that I have the pleasure of running a mayoral campaign out of Baltimore. So I literally just got back from Baltimore last night. And if you ever question what Detroit looks like and the challenges that Detroit has, you need to go to Baltimore. Let me just tell you right now, if you ever questioned on our worst day what our communities look like, you need to go to Baltimore. Let me just say that again. And in traveling around this city and looking at the nature of the people in the city and being with my candidate, great morning, Carmichael Stokey Kennedy, an amazing steward and advocate and servant of the people who has been doing the work in the community, not just asking for a title, doing the work, you can see how rhetoric, to her point, has killed us. Propaganda. Because in the political cycle specifically, everyone comes in with the same song and dance. They come in with the same conversation. That when you elect me, I'm going to do this for you, I'm going to do that for you. And we've been trained to look at that, to believe that that is what a candidate should have to say to us to make us feel good, to be able to answer those same little questions. Well, what are you going to do different? Or what are you going to... The truth of the matter is, everyone that is talking to you, if they had not done alternative research, if they do not have alternative and innovative ideas, they will do nothing different for you, because all they're doing is the same old dog and pony show. Do you get that? And we've been led and learned to believe that that is the way that it should be, and you keep electing and selecting the same people, and they do the same thing, and your conditions worsen and worsen, and while others progress, and you sit here and you wonder what happened, and then you're mad at the people. No, be mad at you, because you didn't understand the ball and chain. You didn't understand the overlay for the underplay. And that's the truth about all of this, no matter what this is. I could be talking about anything. You have to stop thinking that the conversations and the modus operandi of the oppressor is going to benefit you. Let me just say that right now. Everything that we've been taught is not original thought to us. It has been given based on a power structure that wants us to believe and to buy into that, and then we perpetuate that same thing. And then we expect that to work for us. It's not going to work for us. You hear me? Crime will not get better until you deal with the traumas of the people in the communities in which crime is perpetuated on and violence is perpetuated on. It's about trauma. You can put as much money into technology if you want to. You can have all the lights and all the green lights and all the stop signs and all the additional police force. All that's going to do is squash and quell. Arresting them doesn't deal with the trauma. It just makes your numbers go down. Approving cannabis and not addressing the incarceration and the expungement doesn't benefit the community. It still benefits big business. But now we just say we have something else to deal with. Using cannabis to wean people off of opioids is not the solution to opioids. But now, because it is thriving and it's beneficial, they can make money out of both of them. You just heard in the clip that the tobacco industry now is upset because of the monies that they've been lost through cannabis. So now they're diversifying their portfolio and getting into cannabis. Do you get it? So as long as I create something and you keep buying into what I create, I'm making money off of both ends. I'm creating legislation that's going to benefit on both ends. And none of it's going to benefit the people that you say that you're supposed to serve and the people who's supposed to make up this democracy. I know it's a lot this morning. I want you to start. We got to think, because we don't think. And then we start perpetuating those same conversations upon each other. Oh, well, what are you going to do different? How is this going to benefit me? Are you kidding me? Did you ask the last people who don't look like you, who've never come into your community, how it's going to benefit you, what it's going to look like? Stop it. Stop it. Stop being the Pinocchio. Let me go to the line. Do you all get it this morning? Great morning to you.
Hey, good morning, Colette.
Oh, Deputy Chief, good morning.
Hey, you all right?
I'm amazing. How are you? Did you get my message?
You got the message?
Did you get mine?
No, I didn't.
Yeah, I apologize to you that I was heading out of town.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, but I'm back in town. So
all
we
right.
can so we can make it work.
Okay, all right, I'll contact. But earlier you said you named a few organizations that should, if I'm not mistaken, you named a few that get involved in this legislation or this attempt for cannabis, right?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Look, for me, I look at this as similar to the casino gaming when Mayor Coleman Young said no. I mean, he wanted it, but then the preachers got together and they boo-hooed it, right?
Yes.
Then they turned around. I'm looking at some program at 2 o'clock in the morning, and I see preachers from inner city Detroit supporting it. Okay?
Yes. Yes.
And I I never forget that, and so that's what's happening here. These preachers and these different black organizations, NAACP and others, Urban League and New Detroit and all of them, they're trying to figure out a way that they can make money. They can get in and make the money. Because if you look at the beginning of Motor City Casino, okay, you had a group of black prominent citizens in Detroit.
Okay.
They got together and they tried to get a casino thing going. They ran out of money. They went to Don Barton. They asked Don Barton, hey, can we get a loan to finish this project? He said, yeah. And I can't remember the exact amount of interest that he was going to charge, but they said that was too much. So they went to Illich. And Illich told him, well, you need to talk to my wife. Okay, well, Marion, she said, well, I'll support your project, but it would be 51% interest. I remember that figure.
You remember that? Right.
Yeah, it would be 51%.
51%.
And these ignorant Negroes said yes.
Yes.
They accepted it.
Yes.
And you look at it today, not one of them have ownership in Motor City Casino.
Yeah.
Now, that's the ignorance that is floating around Detroit. And again, like you say about the political arena, it's the same mind thing. That's why we have to get young people involved. We have to get new faces without question. I mean, we just had our call to action meeting this past Saturday. And we had young people there. It was fantastic.
Nice.
New ideas, new faces, new concepts. And see, that's what we need throughout this political season.
Yes, absolutely. And let me just say something. Hold on one second. And Deputy Chief, and I need you all to understand what he just said. And I don't have a problem with that. Let me just tell you, if you are in a space, if you're the NAACP or the whatever, and let me just tell you, I've reached out to all of them. So don't Khaled, you're not giving them a chance. No. I've reached out to the right hand or the main man or the this or the that. I've done all of that to no avail. If you want to get in the space, get in the space. It is a business. I'm not trying to be funny. Why wouldn't you? If you could get a business out of the cannabis industry, what's wrong with that? If the municipalities want to create their own cannabis industry, what's wrong with that? That's creative thinking that's going to benefit the people. It's part of your development, people. But again, if you don't know anything, you only deal with people who have the power and they tell you what it should be, then none of it's going to benefit us. It's no different than what Deputy Chief is trying to tell you. If you keep looking to the Geppetto to save you, the Geppetto is never going to save you. The Geppetto is going to tell you what he wants to tell you so you can give it all and bring it all back to him. Remember Geppetto and Pinocchio? That's what I'm talking about. And so that's what we consistently do in all areas. We keep going back to the Geppetto to save us. We keep going back to the Geppetto to tell us, oh, this is how it should be. This is the programs you should have. This is who you should elect and select. This is how you should run your business. How does that work for us? I mean, seriously, like hear me. It's across the board, everyone. I'm not just poo-pooing on Michigan. I can poo-poo on Michigan. I'm from Michigan. I'm a Detroiter. I can say I can do it. But I was in Baltimore. It's the same thing. Exact same thing. And let me just tell you, and Baltimore has more Caucasian homeless than black folk. You hear me? Out of Maryland. I pull up the numbers. I looked at so on every corner, when you cross over to that bridge from the half and the half nots, it's the two cities just like Detroit. You cross over the bridge, and they're all out there. And I was just shocked. I was like, well, where did this come from? It's understood. Because they're poor as poor. You all get this? It's no, so now I'm coming in with Trump. It doesn't, poor is poor. Rich is rich. Do you all get that? You keep thinking that because you're white, that this is going to work for you. There are white folks that aren't benefiting from policy. There are white people aren't benefiting from cannabis. Will you stop? But that's what, if you consistently keep listening to what they tell you, and you keep governing yourselves by what they say, remember Noam Chomsky's book, What They Say? It will never benefit us. Everybody, take the blinders off. And Deputy Chief, I commend you all for being open to young people. That's the biggest challenge that we have right now, is that these old heads, old school, don't want to let the young folks in because everybody's so concerned about what their legacy is going to be. And then they die off, having groomed anybody else. We can see it historically throughout the political process. No one grooms anybody. Can I just say it again? No one grooms anybody, and then you die, or you get old and senile or Alzheimer's, dementia, whatever, and then we're just stuck. And then someone else comes on in, and then it's just gone.
Oh, yeah.
Because that's what we do.
Yeah, and when you can look at the Detroit grassroots.
Yeah.
Name a grassroots organization in Detroit that has an election for new leadership.
I don't get it. And the thing that gets me across the board in all of this is that you're not making it work for you. Do you all get it? You have titles, and what comes with the title? All you have is a title. And people call you the title, and you fight for the title, and you're not making any dent in the change. You're not creating any change in socioeconomic conditions. You're not doing any type of development. You're not clearing anybody's records. You're not doing any job training. You're not pushing a change in any legislation. Do you want me to keep going on and on? But you have a title.
Yeah, they're not on that. They're not on that level that you just mentioned.
No, because guess what?
That's one of the major problems here.
Because they don't think, Deputy Chief.
You're right.
We don't. You all, and you might not like it, and I know my phone is going to blow up, and I don't have a problem with it. Look, if we only go by what someone tells us, how is it going to benefit us, is all I'm saying.
Right.
And so you all might not like Deputy Chief and what he's presenting, but his motto is going to create a new form of partnership, a collaboration, a collective, which then puts new leadership up there. But realize that the persons are a representation of the group. And it goes back to our point, if you understand democracy, you will realize that the power is in the people. Y'all get that?
Yeah.
You just might have one person up front or two people up front to represent your collective effort. But again, as Jason Riley said, we're the only group of people who've given all our power away to the political process and then expect it to work for us.
Yeah, and see, this is the thing, Colette.
Okay.
We, in Detroit, we cannot afford to have another 30 to 40 years of ignorance floating around Detroit.
Well, the truth is, maybe, Deputy Chief, we can afford it. We can't afford it because we're just used to it being on our backs.
Yeah.
We don't want anything different.
Look what it's doing to our future. Our future is what? Our children.
Yes.
Children.
Yes.
Children.
Yes.
No other race of people in this world put their children, grandchildren, great-grandchildren in harm's way. But it happens in Detroit.
Well, let me just say, and everyone, it's happening all across this country. I just spent 7 days in Baltimore, and I'm telling you, you think you got it bad here? Stop. Let me just tell you. But it's those of us who are going to make it better for us. Deputy Chief, I appreciate you. Thank you so much. Look forward to following up with you. And everyone, there's a clip. I want to show this to you because we're never going to end these conversations with not having a solution, not showing how we're moving forward, not showing how we're making the system work for us. It's only about 4 or 5 minutes. It's perfect. It'll take us out into this day for this conversation. If Mr. Tyler tells me we're ready, it is our video that addresses Mr. Kobe Evans. He's a co-owner of the first recreational licensed facility in Boston for cannabis, and it's an amazing conversation. And I think a lot of times we just don't get it because we don't see people that look like us learning how to make the system work for us. Do you need me to say that again? We don't see people that look like us making the system work for them, which is us. He's representative of all of us. And so I want us to see that. I want us to visualize it because it can be you. No matter where you want to go in this space, it can be you. So, Mr. Tyler, if we're ready for it, we're ready. So, everyone, let's take a look at the clip, and then you'll tell me what you think.
Welcome back. Well, Boston will soon get its first recreational marijuana store because state regulators gave a provisional license recently to Pure Oasis in Dorchester.
And joining us tonight is the co-owner of Pure Oasis, Kobe Evans. Kobe, thanks so much for coming in. We appreciate it.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
So the store is going to open up on Blue Hill Avenue in Dorchester.
Yes.
How soon do you think you can get it open, and what's the store going to offer?
So again, we're driving the team to get it done as soon as possible. So we have to do a build out of retail space. We have to meet with the city and talk about some safety concerns and public safety and things of that nature. So we're looking at hopefully the end of October.
This was the first license given under the Economic Empowerment Program,
Correct.
which was designed to help communities that were disproportionately harmed by the criminalization of marijuana.
Correct.
Let's talk about the numbers a little bit, because in terms of how many provisional licenses have been given and have been approved, but the small number that's gone toward the equity program.
Yeah.
Talk about how that's worked out.
In terms of numbers, again, there are a lot of companies that operate around the country that are poised for this opportunity, and so they're ready and they're able to navigate some of these gauntlets a lot easier than someone who may be a small business who doesn't have the experience.
Right. You said in the Boston Globe that you actually think the outlook is bleak for other people of color looking to get a license in Massachusetts. Again, you're the first person of color to be a co-owner of one of these licenses.
Yeah.
Why is the outlook bleak?
Well, again, the application process is generally straightforward from the state side. It is laid out. Your expectations are clear. What you need to do in terms of applying is very direct. But there's a nuance in the application for Massachusetts where you need to get this host agreement. Your final state application is dependent on a host agreement, and the host agreement process varies from town to town. And with over 200 towns in Massachusetts, you never know what you're going to expect. Some towns have a very transparent process. Some towns have no process. And, you know, imagine if you had to get in touch with the mayor of Medford like we had to do. You know, that's not the easiest thing to do in the world, to just email the mayor and say, hey, I want a host agreement. And for us, that's been very daunting, but, you know, that's the reality of it.
One of the reasons the law was passed, I think a lot of people think, is because each town was given the power. Each municipality could opt out if they wanted to.
Correct.
They had their own vote.
Correct.
So that is just going to be part of the process naturally, that each individual municipality is going to be tough to navigate. So what do you suggest should change about the process to create more equity?
Well, the hard part is that, you know, Massachusetts is the only state in the country that has legalized recreational marijuana that has a host agreement process. Most other states realize it's just a more streamlined process just to have it at one level within the state government. And so at this point, because it is hard-coded into the law, I don't know if we can navigate around the host agreement process. Maybe the law could be amended to say that, hey, if you're an economic empowerment applicant, you don't need a host agreement. That's the easiest way to fix the problem and to make it easier so that we can achieve the numbers that voters voted for.
On the other end of the spectrum are people who, whether they live in Boston or don't, they don't want a marijuana store on their block. What do you say to people who are worried about right on Blue Hill Avenue there, maybe it attracts more crime, they might argue? What would you say to them?
Well, you know, the interesting part is that we have deep roots in the community and we wanted to be responsible neighbors. So what we did before we even thought about opening up in the neighborhood is that we went to Denver, we went to Las Vegas, and we saw actual operating dispensaries. We went inside, we toured the neighborhood to see if there was an impact, whether good or bad. In most places, if you travel the country, to ask or see for yourself, it's invisible. You see people going in and out, but again, you don't see the type of issues with maybe a liquor store what people relate to. It's very professional because these are working class people who have better things to do than to stand around and get harassed by police for, you know, doing something that's illegal.
You're very close to opening this shop in Boston. You've also applied in Medford and in Mattapan as well, so also Boston. But the Medford process, How has that gone? Where do you stand on that?
Medford is, every town is different, and Medford is a gauntlet. It's a daunting task to say, okay, reach out to this municipality, get in touch with the mayor, and work out a host agreement. And I don't have those type of political connections in Medford to facilitate that. So it's a lot of throwing darts and a lot of hoping things work out. But the best we can do is email the mayor and talk about maybe a meeting. But so far it's definitely been a challenge, and we're keeping our fingers crossed.
So your background is real estate.
Yeah.
Entering a whole new industry.
Yeah.
Kobe Evans from Pure Oasis. Thanks so much for coming in. We appreciate it.
I appreciate it.
Good luck. We appreciate it, Kobe.
Everyone, I just appreciate WBZ and Kobe Evans and Pure Oasis for giving us that model and that example, and that's where CASE comes in. Cannabis Association for Social Equity, because then we can come in, assist Mr. Evans to make the calls to the municipalities, to put the pressure on, to be able to have the conversations that are going to empower us. It's really simple. I just got a call back from the mayor of Philadelphia. Great morning, Mr. Kinney, Honorable Mayor Kinney. So it can happen. You can just send an email right through and the mayor hits you right back, because that's what it's about. It's persistence, it's education, it's relationships, it's committed to the greater good. So I pray that today you have been educated, enlightened, and empowered about the business of cannabis. All your resources, one-stop shop right here. You can go to cannabiz.tv, KANNABIZ.TV. Only a phone call away. To here to help you, to empower you, to make it better for you. Make your moments matter. Make today amazing. Look forward to seeing you bright and early tomorrow morning for Coffee and Conversation with Colette. See you then.
You're watching Detroit's own WHPR TV. Detroit Live.
Hi, this is Colette Ramsey. You can watch me 24 hours a day, 7 days a week on the WHPR TV Now app. Download our free app at WHPR TV Now.
Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday, 7 a.m. Eastern.
I'm the president of Strava Craft Coffee. We're a local specialty coffee roaster. We've been in business for a year and a half. We chose to celebrate the infusion of cannabis into some really fantastic coffee. The really great thing about Denver is that it's a community of innovators, of makers, of specialty foods, specialty experiences. And as we've moved into the cannabis community with our hemp-infused coffee, we've connected with members of this community that are extremely supportive. They believe in our vision, and they help connect us with resources. We're using a hemp-derived CBD oil to infuse into the beans, and it produces some really fantastic results for consumers. You can enjoy a couple cups of coffee and not worry about coffee jitters, and it's fantastic for alleviating anxiety as well. We roast all of our coffees here in Denver, Colorado. We do the infusions here as well, and then package up in 12-ounce bags of whole bean coffee, and we sell those